All right, let's just jump right into this. Welcome to this explainer where we are uncovering what is honestly a high-stakes, historical thriller. We're talking about an event that literally shaped an empire and forged the bedrock of a global faith. Yep, today we are diving into the Council of Nicaea.
Okay, so the whole thing really centers around this single verse right here, John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You see, for the early church, this specific verse was either the absolute rock-solid foundation of their faith, or it meant absolutely nothing at all. Back in 325 AD, the entire Christian world suddenly realized they had to answer one crucial question, and it couldn't wait. Was Jesus Christ the eternal God, or was he just a created being? The stakes literally do not get higher than that.
Section 1. The Crack in the Foundation, the Rise of Arius. To really grasp how this crisis kicked off, we have to take a quick trip to Alexandria, Egypt. There was this priest named Arius, and he introduced an idea that his opponents saw as a massively dangerous crack in their theological foundation. Now, Arius was educated, he was articulate, and his ideas started spreading like wildfire, because as history tells us time and time again, huge ideological shifts really arrive looking dangerous, right? They usually come wrapped up in logic. Arius basically believed Christ was God's highest creation, famously arguing that there was a time when the Son was not. But a young deacon named Athanasius spotted a fatal flaw here. He argued that if Christ was merely a created being, well, the church's entire structure of salvation just completely collapses. To Athanasius, a creature couldn't possibly provide divine salvation.
Section 2. The Emperor steps in. Constantine's power play.
Think about it from a political standpoint. A divided church essentially meant a divided empire, and Emperor Constantine was absolutely not going to sit back and let a theological debate tear Rome apart. He needed to preserve unity. And what is just wild to me is how incredibly fast all of this moved. Look at this. Just a little over a decade prior, in 313 AD, the Edict of Milan finally legalized Christianity after years of brutal persecution. By 318, Arianism is spreading rapidly. And then boom, 325 AD, Emperor Constantine himself convenes the Council of Nicaea. In a span of just 12 years, Christian leaders went from being violently hunted down to having their internal disputes settled by the emperor inside an imperial palace. It's just staggering.
And speaking of the emperor, talk about a dramatic entrance. St. Eusebius wrote this description of Constantine arriving at the council, calling him shining with the fiery radiance of a purple robe and adorned with the dazzling brilliance of gold and precious stones. He totally dazzled the attendees. He was making it crystal clear just how much massive political weight was backing this debate. I mean, he even delivered his opening speech in Latin just to really hammer home that imperial authority.
318. That is the number of bishops who traveled from all corners of Christendom for this showdown. The scale of this gathering was totally unprecedented. And get this, they were fully funded by the public purse. Imagine that. All travel and expenses paid for by the Roman state so that church leaders and their entourages could get together and hash out their core doctrine.
Section 3. The Showdown at Nicaea. Bishops, Theology, and Flying Fists.
Now, make no mistake, this was definitely not some polite, quiet boardroom meeting. Tensions were completely through the roof. Remember, many of these bishops literally still bore the physical scars from the recent Roman persecutions under Emperor Diocletian. They had bled for this faith. So to give you an idea of the human drama unfolding here, according to legend, St. Nicholas of Myra, yes, the exact same guy who would eventually inspire the jolly figure of Santa Claus, got so infuriated listening to the debates that he supposedly walked right up and punched Arius in the face. I mean, it was a wildly passionate and volatile gathering.
But hey, while they were busy trying to solve a massive theological crisis, they also had some pretty standard administrative paperwork to get through. They set a common date for Easter, which, funnily enough, is something church leaders are still discussing today. They issued 20 new church laws, banned clergy from self-castration, which really points to a very specific cultural issue they were having at the time, and they even prohibited kneeling on Sundays because standing was actually the standard posture for prayer back then.
Section 4. One word changes everything. The ultimate fix.
So the council desperately needed a way to completely shut down the Arian debate, and they found their ultimate fix by weaponizing one single Greek word, homoousios. It translates to consubstantial, meaning Christ is of the exact same essence or substance as God the Father. Not just similar, not kind of like God, not a lesser divine being, the exact same. For the Orthodox bishops, this slammed the door shut on any confusion. They definitively declared that Christ was fully God.
And this single word, it became the absolute spine of the Nicene Creed. Now, they didn't just pull this out of thin air. It directly reflected their key scriptures. You've got Colossians 1:16, all things created through him and for him. Hebrews 1:3, the exact imprint of God's nature. And Jesus' own words in John 10:30, I and the Father are one. They took all of this and codified it into the creed to lock in what they saw as the impenetrable, rock-solid truth of their faith.
Section 5. The Man Who Wouldn't Bend, Athanasius and the Long Fight.
Because, as it turns out, adopting the creed wasn't actually the end of the war. It was really just one major battle won. Our young deacon, Athanasius, eventually becomes Pope of Alexandria, and he spent the rest of his life fiercely defending this doctrine against massive political pressure. In fact, over his 47 years as pope, he was forced into exile an astonishing 5 separate times. Emperors were constantly breathing down his neck, pressuring him to soften his stance, to find a middle ground with the Arians, to just play nice. But he absolutely refused to bend, believing that any compromise on the nature of Christ was a total betrayal of the faith.
His stubbornness was crucial, honestly, because the Arian movement didn't just go away, it lingered and shifted with the political winds for decades after Nicaea. Even Constantine himself grew lenient toward them later in life, and get this, he was actually baptized on his deathbed by an Arian bishop. It took another 55 years, all the way until the First Council of Constantinople in 381 AD, for Arianism to finally be officially snuffed out in the empire.
Section 6. A foundation that still holds. The enduring legacy of the Creed. So what does this all mean for us today? Well, to Orthodox Christians, the firm lines drawn at Nicaea weren't cruel. They were protective. They safeguarded the core of Christian belief right into the modern era. The Nicene Creed isn't just some dusty museum piece. It's actively recited in churches across the globe every single week. Recently, the church actually marked the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. For millions of believers, reciting that creed is a living declaration, a direct link back to that very room in 325 AD.
The men at Nicaea didn't just sit around debating a doctrine. They forged the absolute foundation of a global religion while under immense, crushing pressure. So I want to leave you with a question to think about. If the foundation of your core beliefs was challenged by the sheer weight of an entire empire, would you hold your ground, or would you drift? When the pressure really builds, what exactly are you anchored to?
That is absolutely something worth sitting with. If this explainer meant something to you, or if you just learned something new today, hit that subscribe button for more visually driven deep dives. Thanks so much for joining me as we unearth history's biggest turning points, and I'll catch you in the next one.